Hey team, welcome to the latest episode of Accidental Business Owners.
The premise of the show is that last year we became full-time business owners. We left our 9-to-5s to go all in on the podcast and the other businesses we built off the back of it, and thought it would be interesting to document our journey.
We also started working with a business and mindset coach, Di Foster, who you might remember as a guest on the podcast, and quickly realised she was the perfect foil to help work through the highs and lows of running a business.
Our business journey has been the focus of the episodes, but recently we asked you, the audience, if you had any topics you wanted us to tackle, and we got a bunch in. So we're opening the ABO fun bag to try and answer them for you.
And during the episode, we'll also answer a listener question brought to you by our friends at Xero as well.
Accidental Business Owners is sponsored by Icehouse. Icehouse is a community for Kiwis wanting to take their business to the next level. Their practical programs, one-on-one business coaching and short workshops are designed specifically for people who own and manage their businesses and the leaders they back to get things done. To learn more, visit the icehouse.co.nz. Enjoy. Got a question for you, Di.
Oh, can't wait.
What number Accidental Business Owner episode is this?
That's a dick question.
20.
About that.
No, it's not, guys.
What is it then?
What is it?
23.
About 20.
10%.
23.
We thought we've got enough in the bag to do something a bit different with this one. We've got a really cool community here at Accidental Business Owners, and we get a ton of feedback after each show. And it's awesome. It's really inspiring and invigorating. It's like,
just
why
give them
we
a name.
Yeah.
ABOers. Maybe not. Maybe if you're in the workshop,
we'll workshop it.
If you're in the community, suggest a name.
But we've been putting out some social posts asking for questions, and this is going to be a fun bag where we're going to answer the listeners' questions.
Let's go.
Yeah. All right. So first one is from Ben in Christchurch, and it's a question for Steve and Seamus. When did you have the security to leave your 9-to-5, and how did you know?
Can I answer it for them? They
for both of
didn't,
us?
and they just did it anyway.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, we didn't really. I'd been working contract stuff for about 4 years, I think. So as soon as it made sense for the business to be able to support both of us, that's when I thought we were all in.
So it wasn't such a big, because you were working on contract, it wasn't that sort of 9-to-5 stop, starting something else.
Yeah, I'd kind of had done a lot of that for about 3 or 4 years. I mean, I kind of always had a steady income and little dribs and drabs that topped it up. I still have the dribs and drabs that tops it up and still have the steady income. But it was, I think, when the business was able to pay both of us was when I tipped over.
Yeah. So I was a journalist at the Herald, and I think this was about 3 years in, the podcast started making money. Initially, we reinvested it into marketing, but then it got to a point where we could pay ourselves a little bit if we wanted. And there was a moment I actually got called out at work for not doing stuff, for not working.
I'm not surprised.
For not doing my job. And I remember getting pissed off with the boss. It's like, hey, fucking call me out. And then I was like, as my way. He's right. My attention is the podcast. The podcast was building at that point. We were kind of getting known, and I was having this job as a website editor, essentially. And it got to the point I was like, all right, Shay, I think we had a conversation. I've got a plan. It's going to be a high trust model, but I want you to sort of buy into it with me. And initially I went down to 2 days a week at the Herald. I had enough money that I thought I could supplement what I would not earn at the Herald with money income from the podcast and give me more time to help try to develop revenue streams. And at the time we kind of started the Reflections business, and I knew that I thought that was kind of a safety net. Even if podcast sponsorship doesn't come in, we've developed this kind of side hustle where I think we were doing them for $2,000 at the time. I was like, oh, that's, it's awesome. More than a week's pay. So,
and also speaking.
Yeah, I don't know if we were...
There was a couple that were on the cards at the time.
Yeah, okay. So there were little bits and pieces. That's right. That's when we sort of first linked up.
So there was multiple income streams. So there was like the podcast, speaking and Reflections. So there was a safety net in that, and that you weren't just relying on the one thing. And even in the sponsorship, there wasn't just one sponsor. There was a couple. So what I'm trying to point out is that there was some security and some safety in the fact that it wasn't in just one thing.
Yes. And I remember vividly like we had this discussion that I need to sell our product. Like that was a real turning moment for us. And do you remember the first two that came on were Peter Pitt and Waterboy, and sold 2-3 month packages for whatever it was, but it was like shit.
Yeah.
This is real.
This is real. Like the amount of money I've sold there is like 2-3 months worth of work at the Herald. Holy shit. I remember calling you up. Do you remember that call afterwards? It's like, Shay, I think we can do it. So to move the story along, and then it went from 2 days to I realized that I could actually leave the job, but we didn't have enough money for both of us to be full-time. We talked about me getting paid for 6 months with the goal of bringing Shay up, and the snowball kept building, the pod kept getting bigger, the sponsorship and the advertising increased. And yeah.
One thing I'm going to answer, not that he asked me, but Ben, I'm going to answer your question just in more generalistic terms around some accidental business stuff that I know. People do it a couple of different ways. They do it so they build their side hustle up, that they have got confidence that they know the side hustle can bring in as much as their normal 9-to-5 job. While they're doing that, quite often they will be putting money aside so that there is a safety net. So for some people, they need a safety net of, say, for their family, 3 to 6 months worth of income or expenses, so that if anything happened and no income came in for 6 months, they could still carry on their family life. Maybe it's slightly, reduced luxury, but their family could still carry on. So that's one way of doing it, is building the side hustle business up so that it's bringing in what the 9-to-5 is. But also, if you are conservative, or if you've got some anxiety around the quality of that money coming in and the regularity, then having a safety net there is quite important. So I always think of it as an emergency fund or just simply a freedom fund. And so that can be quite useful. So if for some reason the business went through a bit of a blip and it wasn't able to pay you for 3 months, then you can dip into that. So I think that the answer to this, I think, for people that I've worked with, is that it is different for everybody. And it depends on your risk appetite. It depends on how confident you are within the business. It depends on how long the business has been going for. The boys had a podcast for 5 years before they, commercialized it. So there's quite a following, and there's quite a significant product there in order to get some commercialization on. So I hope that was helpful.
If I had my time again, I would have that freedom fund. I would have that freedom fund, because that would have allowed me to jump in earlier, which potentially could have fast-tracked our progress. Not that we go too fast anyway, as we keep getting told. But it's interesting, like reflecting back on it, because the podcast for me was just like another one of those potential income streams that I had built over that time period.
Do you think you go too fast?
No, God no.
You don't think you go, you just said we get told that we go too fast.
Yeah, so if I'd have gone in earlier.
No, that's one specific question I want you to answer. You just said we get told that we go too fast.
We go too fast.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
Fucking on you, mate. Don't you put
this
it
is
on
kind
me.
of
We go too fast. We go too fast.
This is triggering a few memories from me of those early conversations with you. Mm-hmm. And one of them I remember really clearly. You're saying, well, what if it goes wrong? What happens? And then what happens? And then what happens? And by talking it out, I was like, yeah, okay, I'll be okay. I'll be okay. And that gave me the comfort. I was like, okay, well, that's worst case scenario. I'm still going to be okay.
Yep. So it is good to work through those. It is good to acknowledge the thing that holds us back. So quite often when I'm working with people, the thing that I notice is exactly what Steve said. You build something up in your head where you haven't thought through the different options, and then you just need to find a solution for those things that makes you comfortable enough to take the action that you're looking at taking.
Right, time for a question from our listeners, brought to you by Xero, your business supercharged. What does it feel like to run your own business? I'm 18 months in. I don't know the timeline, but I would say a roller coaster, a great, like a thrilling, awesome roller coaster, but with some highs and lows, and I can see that for the foreseeable future. Like riding a wave is another analogy. It's totally different to being an employee. I love it. I don't think I could go back.
Yeah, I don't think I could go back to working for anybody else. I think equal parts hard work, terrifying, exhilarating, and hugely rewarding. I think getting it to do it with your mate is an amazingly weird experience, which brings you closer together than you could possibly imagine. But it's it's a thrill, and every day is very, very different. You never know what you're going to get, which makes it exciting.
I've been doing it for over 20 years now. So I think I'm unemployable. So I don't know any other way of living. How does it feel? It feels like my way of life. I am very, very fortunate that I don't even think about running my own business or working for myself as a job. I'm really fortunate that I've got myself into a position where the work that I do, I absolutely love. Probably the big thing for me in the last year has just, for the first time, has been, if I do it too much, I will burn out. So that's been a big thing for me in the last month, is how do I just look after myself a bit more. But, for me, how does it feel? It just feels like, I don't know, I guess when I think about it over the last 20 years, every time I've thought about going and working for somebody else, the universe very clearly tells me no and keeps sending me in the right direction. So I don't know, it just feels like this is just what I was always going to do. So,
All right, question from Mark in Auckland. Di, you talk a lot about goals. Understatement of the year.
Not anymore. Not anymore.
What's the most common thing people get wrong when they go about goal setting? Bloody good question.
Mark, I officially love you. Thank you for giving me a platform to talk about this. Nobody say anything. This is my show. I talk about a lot about goals with these two boys. In the rest of my life and with the rest of my clients, I hardly ever talk about them. I'm not a big goal person. But here's what I would say. The reason that I've spoken so much about them with these two particular gentlemen is around conflict. People have conflicting goals. So they'll say, I want this and I want this, and they're in direct competition with each other, and neither gets done. So why I've been talking a lot about goals with these guys is I don't think they've been clear on what their North Star is. So quite often I talk about the 10,000-day goals, what do you want to be doing, what do you want to have done, all of that sort of stuff. It's not actually that important. What I'm trying to elicit out of people is what is their North Star. What I'm trying to get out of them is so that they understand what's important. Because when you ask somebody where they want to be in 10,000 days, which is 27 years, very rarely do they say, I just want to have lots of money. Yet in their everyday life, they're ignoring their family, they're ignoring their health, and they're working quite often not in a very practical and solutions-orientated way. And so they're not working today to get them to where it is that they actually want to go. So yes, I do talk about goals a lot, but it's because I'm looking for alignment. So when I feel like somebody doesn't have alignment with the intentions or where they want to go, then I will probably keep harping on about it. But anyway, I've moved on from that these days. But specifically to answer your question, what's the most common thing people get wrong? Well, I think that's it. I think that there's usually a conflict, or think about conflict in another way. It's easy to say you want something, but are you willing to pay the price? So if I say I want to be worth this amount of money, am I prepared to pay the price? Am I prepared to turn up every day and do what needs to be done in order to do that? That is what I think is the most common thing people get wrong, is the alignment part of it. So their 10,000 days is not aligned with how they show up in today.
Okay, this question is from a gentleman named Matty Hinton, who shares the same name as our accountant. And Matty asks, do you guys understand tax?
I have a better understanding of tax now that I ask good questions. Still, there's some blind spots with my tax understanding, but that's why you get very good people around you, like our accountant, Matt Hinton, from Venture Advisory. who's able to help and guide and hold your hand through that process. But I understand, in principle, the two concepts of tax, PAYE and GST.
Okay. And the big one that was missing out of that conversation is company tax.
Oh, yeah, I was only talking about me as an individual.
Okay, but you
Sole
own
trader.
a business.
Sole trader. Oh, and company tax.
Company tax.
That one.
Yeah, the big three.
Well, no, I'm going to go with no. They don't understand tax.
No,
because
clearly not.
PAYE is when you work for a company and they pay you, so you get taxed
Tax.
as you go. PAYE.
Pay as you go.
Yeah.
GST.
GST is when you collect GST on behalf of the government and then you deduct what you've paid out in GST. So there's a balancing act that you have to do once every 2 months or once every 6 months, depending on what your GST is. When a company makes money, they have to pay tax. As a sole trader, you have to pay tax like an individual, but you get to do it on your own. But then the question that I would have for you, Maddie, please just excuse my really, really bad tax. I'm not a tax accountant. But the other question I'd have for you is, do you know what provisional tax is?
Can I try answering it?
Yes.
That's where you pay what you think you have to pay early.
Yes, early, but within the year that you're doing it.
Yeah. That's the one that creeps up on you.
That's the year 2 one.
That you never expect. And then when it hits you, you go, I don't have this money. What do I do?
That's right. This is why they think it. And in the second year, it's some people would call it double tax because you're paying terminal tax and provisional tax in the 1 year.
That's the one that
that gets you.
Is that a common...
Yeah, we
Yes.
can't be the only ones.
Yes.
Yeah, that smacks them in the face.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, especially, the question we had earlier was around going from 9 to 5, which then it's PAYE, so it's really easy. So the advice that I would give to people coming into doing their own business, whether they're a sole trader or whether they're a business, is that you have a separate account, and I call it tax and GST. So there's an X amount of percentage that you take off all of your sales that go into that account so that when your GST is due and your tax is due, it's in that account, but you're not allowed to touch that money.
How many times have you seen businesses wiped out by the double tax?
Don't call it that. Don't call it that. Don't call it that.
Giving me anxiety.
Is it quite common that it'll creep up and then you're in a 20, 30K hole and you can't get out of it?
50K hole.
Right.
Yeah, especially if, they've been going a couple of years and they didn't make any money and then they've gone whoosh, and they're actually making good money in that second year, and it's like, whoa, I've got to pay, or it's that next year, and it's like, whoa, I've got to pay tax for last year, tax for this year, and we're doing really well, and GST, and da-da-da-da-da. And the reason I think it wipes people out is that generally they're quite tired at that point. They've been going a couple of years, and they're like, shit, I've just started to see all this money come into my bank account, and they might have made a business decision to employ somebody or do this or do that, and they're like, whoa,
where did this come from?
Where did this come from? And so I find it really interesting, we all talk about P&L and balance sheet, and some people find that challenging enough to understand. But from a business point of view, I think that they are almost the least important. I mean, they're important, but cash flow is a living, moving document that is super important because that shit puts you under. That's the reason that you go broke, is because there is no cash and you haven't understood the inputs in order to get cash. So for me, when dealing with businesses, I want to understand their cash flow and I want to understand their costings so that, what's their margin on their product so I know whether it's sustainable. Because, like I got a client at the moment and it's like, yep, I'm doing this coaching and I'm really, really busy. It's like, yeah, but in order to grow, you've got to do twice as much and you can't do because it's your hours. So basically you'd be better off not doing it at all. So it comes down to those margin things.
Can I say something else about tax?
Of course you
It's
can.
got to be the most boring topic in the world to talk. You've done a great job of bringing it to life, and shout out Maddie Hinton for the question. But in terms of a topic, man.
No, there is one worse. Tax accountants are not quite at the bottom of the heap.
Yeah.
Auditors are.
It's my brother. Shout out Tom.
Auditors are definitely. Whew.
Okay.
And I'd just like to say that we really appreciate the professionals out there that do this stuff so we don't have to.
Okay, this one's from Sarah in Tauranga. I think me and Shay will attempt to answer this one before you die. What's the best piece of business advice you have?
Mine's role recency bias. Show up and do your job.
That needs no more explanation. Steve?
Let me just say, good answer, but it's weird It was weird giving business advice. Like I feel like I'm totally ill-equipped to be giving business advice.
What's in your head that you've learned? It doesn't have to be the best piece of advice.
I didn't need to preface that. I think it's surround yourself with good people. I think surround yourself with people that can complement your weaknesses.
Mine would be, I'm a banana. And I need to show up as a banana in my business. So my advice, the best piece of advice I think I was being given is utilize my own skills and leverage that. Don't worry about what everyone else is doing. Just work out what your strategy is for your business and your marketing strategy is, and make sure it's aligned with what's going to work for you. So the advice that I give to Steve about how to show up in a personal brand is going to be completely different as the advice that I might give Shay, because one's an orange and one's an apple, and there's no point trying, if you're an apple, to be a banana. It's not going to work. So I think that the advice, has to be very targeted to the person, especially small businesses. You know, it's like you need to make sure that it works for you.
What about some generalist advice, Di?
Do less.
Good.
Simplify the business. Well, we talked before about tax and I talked about how cash flow is king. And then the other piece of that I would say is work out the levers of the business, because I guarantee 90% of the things that you're doing do not change the levers of the business. If you want to know what makes an amazing salesperson that can build a business, it's that they understand the levers of the business. When they get there in the morning at 8 o'clock, probably get there at 7, they do some shit, and at 8 o'clock they pick up the phone and they've got to do 10 calls before they have a coffee. They've figured out the numbers and they know it's a numbers game, and they just work the system to shift the lever of the business. If in your business you need sales, then you need to work out what shifts sales, and then have a scoreboard on what those inputs are to change the levers of the business. If that changes sales, your P&L is fine as long as you know what your margin is and you've worked that out. So people really fixate on the P&L and the revenue and all that sort of stuff. But actually, what comes before the revenue, what comes before the sale, what comes before somebody places an order, what are the levers of the business? And so if you have a scoreboard of that type of thing, you really start to hone in on what shifts the business and shifts the business results. But instead, most people turn up each day and try and do all of the things working in the business, not on the business. And if they just simplified everything down and did what they do really, really well, it would make a significant difference.
That's a better answer.
That's why I'm here.
Yeah. From Kendra in Auckland, Di, what are the most common themes that pop up with the accidental business owners that you work with?
They don't know what they don't know. They are both the problem and the solution. And the thing about business ownership is I reckon it is the fastest way to personal growth. So in a relationship, you can get away with so much. You know, like you can get away with so much. In a business, you can't, there's a scoreboard going on all the time, measuring your performance and how you're doing. And, you know, a P&L comes out once a month. You did good, you did shit, you know, all of this sort of stuff. So if you want to shift that stuff, then you got to look within yourself. And I think that that's the biggest thing, is that the common themes that comes up is what's the mindset of the business owner that is actually holding the business back? So do they know where they want to go? Have they communicated that to the team? Have they got the right team around them? Do they have some weird ass beliefs about money and, like showing up and like not being a noter? I remember Dave Wood saying to me one day, I'm never ever putting my prices on my website. I was like, why? And he goes, because the guy down the road might think I'm a noter. I'm like, okay, do you care what he thinks? No. Okay, good chat. Do it anyway then. So it's that type of belief. Dave's well beyond that, but it's that type of belief that ends up holding you back, because the person you want to sell to just wants to know how much your course is so they can buy it, God forbid. Put the price on the website, people buy it, you stop putting blocks in their way. One of the common things in business in general is very rarely do people think about their client experience, their client journey. They think about, it's like people say, what do you do? Oh, well, I'm a business coach and I spend an hour with you and I do this. No, they only want to know what you're going to do for them from their position, from where they sit. So flip your thinking around about your client, because if you serve your client well, if you give them value, that's where you make money.
Just in the way you operate, I'm interested in your process. Say someone approaches you and they want to work with you and you do like a discovery session or however you do it. Mm-hmm. Do you look them up? Do you have a look at what their sort of background is and sort of predict what their issues might be? Or are you just, in that call, are you just totally a blank canvas?
I'm totally a blank canvas because I'm intuitive, and so I just want to see how they present. Because I'm there to decide if I want to work with them. I'm not there to decide. I'm not there for them to decide if they want to work for me. I'm solely there to go, do you have a problem? Can I help you with that problem? And are you the type of person that I'm happy to sit in a room with for a couple of hours?
Yeah.
Because my life is incredibly valuable to me. So if I think you're a knob, or I think you're not going to do anything, you're not interested in actually solving your own problem, or you don't even have a problem, then I've got better things to do.
From Paul in Hamilton, when was the last time you cried from a business-related situation?
About half an hour ago.
When he got spanked. I can answer this.
No, I'm going to answer it first. You've just done a lot of talking, Di. No, you go ahead.
No. Don't tell me to shut up once.
I find like I get weirdly, well, maybe it's not weirdly, maybe you experience it a lot, emotional during advisory groups when you're talking about things which are important to you, conversations with Shay when stuff gets real. And I've noticed it as I've got late 30s, I seem to have gotten a lot more emotional. And I'm wondering what the connection is just like stage of life and kids and business. But I think it just comes down to how important something is to me. Because when I talk about the kids or Bon, it comes. And when I talk about really important, crunchy business things, that we had a situation last week, which I don't want to talk about, but it went really wrong and it really rattled me. And the emotion came out, and I saw a clip. Brooke O'Neill, I'm sure she won't mind me saying her name. She's opening O Studio, and she put a clip out on social media. Yeah, and she was crying, and the emotional overload of how hard she was working for something and how well she wanted to do with it came out. And I saw that, and I was like, that was me. Yeah, that was me 12 months ago.
I saw that. Yeah,
and I related with it so strongly, and it made me think about what we're doing here. Is people are listening to this and they're relating to it. They might have been on this journey before. Anyway, I'm going off topic, but emotional, I seem to
when it
cry,
matters.
Yeah, I'm not sure like full tears, but like eyes well up all the time, like every week.
He does cry. The last time he cried was when he talked about Bon and the kids and how important it was and the balance between working and family.
No, he welled up yesterday. He welled up yesterday in the advisory.
What about? He didn't actually cry though.
He didn't cry, no.
It was when I was talking about the situation.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Okay, fair enough. He mentioned that.
Yeah.
Over to you, Shay. Apparently I'm last.
No, you go, because I can't think of one.
Oh, I can. Do you want me to help out?
I didn't cry, did I? I just felt like my soul had been crushed.
Okay, I've got one. The last time I absolutely cried was in an advisory meeting.
Oh, yeah.
And we had just decided that we were going to close the Business in Between channel, which meant that I was out of business with you guys and I had a contractual relationship to show up and do this work. And it wasn't that I disagreed with it. It was just that I had loved that process with you guys and it had meant a lot to me. And I think I felt like it was quite a public thing to then, change. And I just combusted. I literally just burst into tears. And I think I remember saying to you guys, that has not happened for a long time, but I had to leave the room. And apparently all the boys looked at each other, Maddie and these two boys looked at each other and said, have we just broken the die? And Maddie came in and said, are you okay? And I said, I'm fine. And I just needed to get it out. It was just like a moment in time.
I was so confused on the other side of that because you're able to wear the different hats, right? And so that emotional hat was you as part of the business, but as our advisor, you're like, this is the right decision. This has to be made. And you were kind of like driving it and leading us there. I was like, yeah. And then we made the decision and then you like burst into tears. Like,
what just happened?
I think that's a really good example of where and we have a slightly unusual relationship. I'm always wearing the advisor hat or the coach hat or whatever that is. And then in that moment, it was like, this is how it affects me as a person. And I just, it was like until that moment, I had not for 1 second given the thought of how I felt about it as my own brand. And so once we made the decision, it was almost like I had this meeting when, we need to tell Di, you're gone. And I was like, combusted into tears. There we go.
Yeah.
The other thing, unless you've got...
No, carry on.
Okay, I'll carry on. Recently, I haven't quite cried about it, but the thing that I've noticed myself get emotional about is my husband turned 60 this year. Now, my husband likes to remind me that him turning 60
Steve the Stallion
has nothing to do with me. And I remind him it has everything to do with me. I'm the person in our family that can make anything about me. So why that is emotional to me is I'm reflecting on the fact that 15 years ago, we sat in a hospital and held hands and the only thing we wanted was to grow old together. It was the single thing that my husband and I wanted and we weren't married at the time, but we'd moved in together, and as Steve would tell you, he felt that everything had been taken away from us, and it felt really, really unfair when I got a terminal diagnosis. And he remembers sitting there holding my hand just thinking, I just want to grow old with this woman. And the realisation that my husband turned 60 this year also came with the fact that in 5 years' time, my son finishes school and, my husband will retire and I will probably look at working a little bit less so I can spend more time with them. And then we kind of looked at each other and went, that thing that was so important to us that we want with every cell in our body is just to grow old together is actually happening. And I don't think over the 15 years we've ever stopped and held hands again and said, we're doing it. Like, this is the dream. Like, we celebrate every wrinkle. We celebrate every grey hair because it's a sign that the thing that we want that is important to us above anything else is just that we get to experience life together.
I don't want to top that. I can't top that. I like, serious, in terms of a work context, I was upset before. Mm-hmm. I didn't cry. I was disappointed in myself. I think there's a difference there. Mm-hmm. In terms of crying from a work situation, it's probably the feeling that I had back in Port Moresby where I'm looking and I physically can't pay people.
Yep.
And knowing that their families, their dependents are relying on that money to come in, and I felt solely responsible for not being able to fulfill that.
That sense of responsibility.
That overwhelm was probably, that was the crying part, but I don't think I've cried in a work context really. There's a difference between,
getting upset, being disappointed.
Getting upset and being disappointed.
And crying like I did at the meeting.
Question from Mark in Hamilton. I have recently left my job to start a small business. I've been out on my own for 9 months, and I'm almost at the point where I can bring on someone else to help me with the load. And it is exhausting because the work is coming in, but I can't quite afford to bring on someone to help. How do I navigate this situation?
Well, before you go out on your own, you put an emergency fund together. So in times like this, you can go to the emergency fund and do it sooner than you need to. If I could change anything about my business, it would be bringing the right people in earlier. Because what we do is we wait till we're maxed out and our cognitive load is way too high. Then we bring someone in and we're expecting to be able to teach them in an efficient and calm manner, and we screw that up. I've done that a couple of times. And it's just too late, And so I would say as much forward thinking as we can is kind of like the answer. But, that's great in hindsight. I would always opt for bringing the person in as early as I possibly can, because if you get the right person with knowing the levers of the business and getting them on generating that sort of income, so that helps all of those things that we've been talking about, then it relieves everything. So shifts it.
Are you talking about like already future planning by the time you start for what you will need?
Definitely.
And things like having a job description ready to run or what you want them to do? Because like from our perspective, we've brought somebody on board, but we've made the role up as we've gone.
I think
we're creating it as we go.
Yeah, I think that's because you didn't do what I told you to do, which was
wouldn't it? You got a scoreboard on? You got a scoreboard on there?
Do you remember we talked about
writing down all the things that we do?
Yeah,
and that would help make our lives easier if we offloaded them to somebody else.
I'm always thinking of where I'm going to end up, so I know how big I want my business to be now. Like I know how many people I'm going to have, what roles they're going to do, what my job is, and how all that works. And then I know from there, how much income I can earn from that and what all that looks like. I have all that set in my brain, and it's like real simple formulas and all of that. So what I do in Asana, if I was going for a much bigger, if I was going for a bigger team, I might have 10 roles. So as the work comes in, and in the current situation, I would say, well, normally that will be the finance person, or normally that would be the, customer services person, or whatever those roles are, and I'd start tagging them. So when it comes to my first hire, I say, okay, well, which of those jobs, how much is that taking up? And it makes logical sense that my first hire is going to be the customer services person, because I'm spending 50% of my time doing that. So there's a two-part thing. One, where are my best skills going to be? And two, what is the job that I'm trying to offload? So then instead of having to make it up as we go along, we just look at our Asana task list and we go, actually, this is the job that I've been spending so much time over the last 6 months on average 20 hours a week. If I got that, I get 20 hours a week back.
Yeah.
And so, I always have a number of things going on in my head. Where do I want to go? What does my business model look like? What's the organisational chart I need in order to achieve that? And then a really current list of what's the obvious first hire based on what we're doing at this point in time.
I don't know Mark's situation, but where do you stand on contractors versus bringing somebody into the business?
I think this is a risk and an assessment. So contractors are fantastic because you don't have all of the, basically do this job, get paid. So you don't have all that downtime stuff that we know that when you employ someone, you always have, but you're paying them less because a contractor rate should be literally twice as much because you're not having to train them and they bring their own gear and a whole lot of other things. You're not paying them holidays or sick days or, professional development stuff. So there's a way up. However, if I know businesses where they've got the whole contract model and then when things get really busy in their industry, they lose all of their contractors. So that's a risk assessment. It's a great way to grow, and I like the combination of both. Quite often with businesses, I like the combination of both. When you get somebody that's good, it depends what they want as well though. And so this is the thing, is that I know that in Christchurch with a couple of tradies, they do the combination. And when workers are tied, you've got to look at what the person actually wants. So some contractors are really, really, really good at managing themselves, and they want a month off or a couple of months off a year. So the reason they want a contract is they want that flexibility. That's really important to them. Somebody else who's just bought a house, the security of income is the only thing they're interested in because they need to secure that for the bank. So I don't think there is an answer. And I think that sometimes you have to be willing to do either to get the right person.
Right. I want to end with, we said at the top, like we get some really cool feedback on the show. And I want to read a piece I got a couple of weeks ago, which I think reflects a lot of the stuff we get. Hey, mate, just listen to your Being Too Busy pod. I'm sitting at work doing my invoicing, taking a break from peopling, listening to you and Di. Fucking loved it. I'm dyslexic. Thanks to autocorrect, I can spell it. So to put down what I got out of it is hard without physically talking, but it's changed my short-term mindset and I'm pumped for the day. It's the boost I needed. I laughed and cried, but it made a difference. I think what you guys are doing is incredible, showing it's okay to not be okay, to fall and to rise, stripping away the word staunch and showing vulnerability. I think it's epic you're brave enough to put it out there. You're helping a lot more people than you think, not just business-wise, but understanding the emotional side of day-to-day existence. This journey is absolutely wild. Everything to lose and everything to gain. Creating something better than potentially we had. The pressure to say, fuck you, I did it, or I'm doing it. I related so much to those moments of realization, literally like someone turned on the lights. My journey is 99% emotional. Good and bad emotions. The management of that is hard. Ultimately, just wanted to thank you.
Makes me think about the fact that this time last year, we weren't doing this. You know, this time last year, I was still in Europe and I hadn't even done my first recording with you guys. And we had an intention that if there was a place in business in between, that you might have me on for a couple of sessions. And then really quickly it turned into live coaching calls. And so like it blows my mind that this has all happened within less than a year and we constantly get this type of feedback.
But we need it. Like the one-on-one sessions in particular.
I needed to hear that because I'm sitting here thinking,
why do I do this?
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking in a one-on-one is like, why would I even dream about putting this out? Because it just shows these things that you do not want anybody to see, that you don't want anybody to know, that you spend a lifetime crafting to hide away from people. And then thinking that there might be somebody out there that's maybe in the same situation that hears that and goes, ooh, that's me.
And like, it's not just somebody. Like, I love that has come from somebody, one person, you know, and we've heard those words. But like, you know, when I do the one-to-one with you guys, I get a stream of messages. When you said this to Shay, when you said this to Steve, you were talking to me. Like, business ownership is hard. People go into business thinking they're going to get lifestyle and they're going to get freedom and that boss is not going to call me out and tell me I don't work hard enough. No, you're right. But by God, that P&L at the end of the year will.
We need to do a better job of sharing the feedback amongst ourselves. We need we do need that.
Yeah. On the tough days. I actually brought a piece of paper with me today. I've gone through a month of thinking about what I want to do with my business, my brand and all of that. Like, so I go through seeking times, you know, I go through, right, and what's going to come out of it is way simpler than what I have been doing. It's going to be really targeted, really simple. But I found these two pieces of paper that were like feedback from one of the talks that I did. And I was like, I should keep a folder of this stuff on the down days. Just like people should, you know, I think like in restaurants and stuff like that, it's like keep those, get a folder of all the good shit you do. James Laughlin talks about personal victory journal, and I keep one now. It's in my bag, and I just write in it good shit that happens. And actually I've gone back and put the years of my life and just some significant things that have happened through my life, and I've actually put it out to when I'm 105. So I've got, as I go, I can fill it in. And I went back and wrote down all of the talks that I've done. Because, on today, it's like, oh, God, here I am slugging away, I've got to do this and I've got to record, someone's asked me to do a talk and I've got to send them this bit of information and I don't have my show reels quite right and I've got all this work to do. And it's like, you forget. Like this time last year, I had no speaking gigs. I've got 16 this year. Do you know what I mean? Like we forget how far we've come because we're so in the trenches, that one, in the trenches of, what's next and how we're growing and all of that sort of stuff and paying the bills and making sure cash flow's okay. We kind of forget sometimes the impact that we might have.
But I'm glad you responded that way. So this has been recorded the week after Shay and Di's one-on-one, if it makes it to air. But like, I know for me, every time I release a one-on-one, like it's a struggle. Like it's
you got to book an overseas holiday whenever they come, or a gig overseas, so you're not in the country when they come out.
Because like what Shay says, it is you kind of, and I think a lot of the feedback, especially around men, is you kind of build yourself up to be strong and knowing and in control or whatever it is, and then you kind of come in here and just admitting like all of your frailties and weaknesses.
I don't know what the interest rate is.
Or getting a mirror held up to you and going, actually, I see this, and you go, oh,
I'm not nearly as good as I thought I was.
Yeah. Or, oh, if you see it, how many other people are seeing it? Anyway.
But in terms of...
Go back and listen to that if you haven't.
Growth, like unreal. Yeah. So thank you, I'd say.
Yeah, thank you so much.
To all the listeners, and like this has turned into a really cool space. So
I think when I get messages like that, it just blows me away. It's like I try and respond to as many messages as I can just to say thank you so much. You'll get a voice message back from me just to say, like, thank you. That just means the world, because it does. Because, I think I said to you guys last time, I'm not sure I signed up for this. Like, tell me when we had a conversation that I would put my coaching on display for everyone, which is a massive vulnerability thing for me because I coach very intuitively. So, people say, what's your framework? What's this? What's that? It's like, and if you're listening to this and if you've followed our journey on Accidental Business Owners, the coaching that I do with these guys is obviously a little bit different because we're all mic'd up, but also it's very targeted towards these two individuals. I do not systematically coach like this with everybody. So it just simply depends where you're at.
Nice, guys. Good answers. Thanks to Xero for that one. Try free for 30 days on Xero.com. Terms apply.